order for Monday, March 16th, 2020. Before we go to the approval agenda, I'd like to put a motion on the floor that the policy and priorities meeting dated March 16th be changed to a special meeting of council, and that COVID-19 and public spaces be added as 8.1 and recycling be removed or moved to 8.2. Or removed, sorry, I'm not reading that. Seconder? Councillor Lehman, discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay. Approval of agenda. Councillor Kirby?
I'd like to move the Monday, March 16, 2020 special meeting of council be approved as amended.
Seconder? Councillor Majinski? All in favor? Carried. Adoption of minutes. That Monday, January 13th, 2020, policies and priorities committee meetings be adopted as presented. Seconder? Councillor Majinski? All in favor? Business arising from the minutes? Petitions and delegations, Tumbler Ridge Public Library, Paula Coutts and Steve Tory to present virtual reality community project proposal, requesting consideration for funding of $50,000. Paula and Steve?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and residents of Tumbler Ridge. In light of everything going on in the world at the moment, I'll keep this short. As I promised last week, we're here tonight to present a brief outline of a virtual reality project that the library is initiating in partnership, I'm pleased to say, with the Geopark, the Museum Foundation, and we hope the District of Tumbler Ridge. And I think Sarah is watching us, if it's live, and Zena is here as well from the museum. Since 2018, when we began considering the use of virtual reality in the library, I've been hoping to offer a form of access to those who are not able to physically hike the trails and explore the trackways. Technology was not ready for us at that time, but it is improving constantly. The launch of VR in the library has been exciting, resulting in some councillors encouraging us to go ahead and develop this project. Currently, we are asking for a grant of $50,000. This will allow the purchase of a high-quality 360-degree camera, content management software, a drone, rental of helicopter and riverboat time as needed, filming, editing, and other post-production work. Whenever possible, we will use volunteers to film some of the footage, but it is unrealistic to expect that a high-quality product will be available in a timely manner if we try to exclusively use volunteers. Since technology is still evolving, we think it best to stage the project using a tiered approach. At this time, we'll purchase cameras, train people to use the cameras in a way that will work for VR, and work on post-production to confirm that we are able to provide a high-quality product. We will gather much raw data and footage that will have to be edited. Video production is not straightforward. I am told that people don't want to watch hours of hiking, so we will be producing interesting interactive products that will allow people to explore different pathways or objects, turning left instead of right, or looking to see what that particular boulder is. We hope to have something available for any trade shows or demonstrations that may take place in the fall of 2020. We plan to start with 2 or 3 location highlights, perfect the quality before moving on to the bigger project that will encompass all seasons and most trails and points of interest. We are not the first geopark to do this. We are fortunate that others, including Magma in northern Norway, have been working on their project and will soon have content to share with us. In turn, we will also be able to share with them. This partnership with Geoparks will give our project and Tumbler Ridge international exposure. Considering the many armchair travelers in this time of self-isolation, we will be able to add our content to that of other groups internationally. Some of the content being developed at Geoparks includes curriculum-related content. We will be able to pair our footage with our Geoparks' existing lesson plans to provide educational content as well. Northern BC Tourism, K-Box, an aspiring geopark in Newfoundland, and other groups are partway through their own virtual reality projects. We will consult with other organizations to identify what works and what can be done differently. I will now hand over to Steve, and then we'll answer any questions you may have.
Hi everybody. I come into this project, of course, from the Geopark and Museum to some extent, but primarily as a library employee for once, which is kind of a nice refresher. I haven't had the chance to do any work at the library in a while. And I have a background of video production. Back when I was just a teenager, we started a little company called Red Rock Productions in my town. It wasn't so much a company as much as it was a work experience gig for some of us teenagers. So I was the editor of that. My friend Alistair was the producer of our productions. And we were specifically working the archaeology angle down in Princeton, which you probably haven't heard about much because they seem to really keep it under wraps, but they have some amazing pictographs down in that area. We were working closely with the Upper Similkameen Band and their archaeologist at the time. So we produced produced one short 5-minute video, and we won some awards, and I got a scholarship to the Vancouver Film School, and then we rounded up some funds from I don't even know where, and produced a 22-minute episode that aired on APTN, and that one we won some awards at the Toronto International Film Festival in the youth category, I should say. So I've got some history of bringing video to the landscape and telling stories with it. It's a really useful medium for that. People's attention spans are, of course, getting shorter all the time we hear. And I think this project, in addition to some VR content, it's going to provide some useful photos and 2D video for our for all kinds of marketing uses. Because I'm the first to admit VR is a bit of a niche product. It's going to have some good wow factor for things like trade shows and certainly when we take it on the road for road shows with the museum and geopark. But it's also going to produce some other useful content for us. And so an important priority for me is to make sure that we bridge this content into a web-friendly format as well, so that we can share some of that. And there's a good example of what that kind of looks like on the K-Box Aspiring Geoparks website. They've got a mountain that you can climb in virtual reality and look around from different viewpoints, and they've got what are typically called hotspots, things in the image that you can hover over and click on to get additional information. I won't bore you with the technical details, but if anyone's curious about any of the scope, specific things that we might be covering, I'd encourage you to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about video production and marketing anytime.
Cool. Any questions from council?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just wondering, once you get this video edited and out, people are gonna be able to watch it online?
Mhm.
Of course, it won't be virtual reality, but at least they'll be able to see it.
That's-
So it'll be, well, quite different from being virtual reality.
Yeah, I think our goal will be to make it as available as possible. The end goal, of course, is we don't want to substitute people making the trip to Tumbler, but we want to whet their appetite as much as possible. And a lot of the platforms that manage this content do allow it to be shared as kind of a Google Street View type view for basic internet. Anybody with a laptop can view. But it would be great to be able to make it available to those with headsets to see that way as well.
And the intent for trade shows and so on is to take, to have a traveling set.
Yeah.
So a laptop with a headset that can go to show the ministers or go to a trade show and be used there. So that's the intent, is to have both.
Okay, Councilor Majinski?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Coco. Thank you, Paula, for your presentation. I really actually enjoyed the quote you said as armchair travelers. That's a no joke. That's a huge thing nowadays, and people get all their information before they even excess anything. So this is pretty important, I think, for us to whet people's appetite, as Mr. Tory says. My question is, do you have a timeline if you do get funding for this to go through? Do you have an expected time frame of when you would like to have something available?
September.
All said and done and
Time
out.
for the trade shows, right? At least something.
Do you think that's attainable?
Yes.
Councillor L?
You mentioned a staged approach to this. So would we be anticipating that this is the first ask of $50,000?
I expect there may be other asks. We'll see how it goes. And how our volunteers stream online in terms of learning how to take appropriate video. And, you know, the more we can train existing staff and volunteers to, and we've got some folks in mind, but yes, it's possible that there will be future projects.
Yes. So I'm not a big fan of blank checks.
No, I
open-ended
understand that.
checks. And we have ran into quite a few situations in the District of Tumbler Ridge where we start down a road that sounds really good with a big spend, and then we're like, and guess what? You got to keep doling out the money, and then we get to a point where it's like we feel like we've spent so much money we can't stop, we can't go back. And to me, I would rather know the costs up front, maintenance costs, how long you would anticipate that this technology would last for, and give us some type of an idea of down the road. Perfect example is our recycling baler in the District of Tumbler Ridge, right? We went and bought a $180,000, whatever it is, recycling baler with the intention of putting this thing in, and did not have all our ducks in a row. And that is why I have concern about a staged approach or what the cost would be down the road.
I think my intent is always to, it just goes hand in hand with libraries. We apply for other grants, we apply for other funding. So this is, the development of this project has come forward more quickly than I anticipated. And so we are in the process of working on sourcing other grants. And I have no doubt in my mind that I can find additional grants. And with any luck, the 50,000 will be our only ask from council, that we can source funds from other places. And in terms of maintenance, it's a library project. It will be maintained within our structure.
Okay.
I got Mayor Bertrand and then myself. Go ahead, Keith.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you very much, Paula and Steve, for your presentation. I really like this idea. What excites me about this idea as well is it brings forward the accessibility aspect of it for people that aren't able to witness all of the splendors of Tumbler Ridge. This definitely helps. So I know there's some grants provincially as far as accessibility goes. That's a big push all throughout the province. So we could definitely look at that angle as well. But thank you very much. It's nice to know that the technology is there and it's possible.
Yeah, so I'll start a little bit just by saying that I did go and speak to Paul, and that was in regards to her budget. We're discussing that, and I threw out some ideas, and one of them was the VR. And, you know, was there a portable station? So it was kind of, they were already working on it. I said, you know, they talked about coming maybe in September or something like that, once they had a few more ducks in a row. And my thing was, is before budget gets approved, maybe if they could, you know, get a little bit more of it done. And I mean, I think they did a pretty good job in it. When she says most of it's there, the rest is going to be grants. With that $50,000, does that include a portable unit to do VR? So that includes a portable unit that will be able to go to trade shows, minister meetings, or wherever. What? Thanks. Councilor Kirby?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Virtual reality, I've been to tourism conferences where they've had virtual reality there, and there are companies out there that can produce you a film to go with your virtual reality systems. Did you guys look at that option before going to just buying all the equipment and doing it in-house?
We know that outsourcing it is going to almost certainly cost more. My suspicion is we could probably produce one or two small things with this kind of a budget. but what we're trying to do is build some local capacity to do this. Ideally, I'd have our summer students very involved with this. It's a good opportunity for them to develop some skills they wouldn't otherwise get in a community this small. But if we have to, we'll certainly outsource certain components of the project. In particular, the post-production is going to be very time intensive. For every hour you film, you sometimes end up editing for 10 hours. And so that's going to be a component that if we can't build that capacity locally, we're going to be shopping it around a little bit. But it would be very expensive to have a professional production company come and do the filming of some of our sites. And it's not necessarily really complex to stick a camera on top of, say, Mount Babcock and allow, and then with the footage, point out all the different peaks you can see from there with that footage. There's a lot of very straightforward filming that would give us a lot of product in the end.
Yeah, because, I mean, using your VRs in the library setting is one thing, but if we're going to try to produce things that we're going to be used as a tourism marketing tool, then you'd want to have it, like, you know, good quality, like Destination BC has done on several of their ads, and they've used it. So it's interesting. I do like the idea for sure, but I'd like to kind of look at other options and just make sure we're making putting the money in the right spot. But
That's certainly the standard that we plan to achieve.
Yeah.
I don't put out products that aren't high quality, and that's certainly our goal, right, Steve? And in fact, we've already talked about Chris's home laptop is VR quality, and he's already looking at testing it and taking it on the road with a headset to kind of make sure that we can relay stuff externally, easily.
Any more questions? All right, well, thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Tory.
you.
thank you.
Consent agenda. Recommendation? Councilor?
All items on the March 16th, 2020 consent agenda be adopted for information.
Seconder? Councilor Howe? All in favor? Carried. Is there anything the council wishes to be brought forward for discussion out of the agenda, consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none. Discussion items. So there was a handout, I know it's not in the agenda in the gallery, but this is the one that we moved forward at the start of the meeting. Council, we have Mr. Helm, we asked Mr. Helm to attend the meeting. So if there is questions, I guess, in regards to COVID-19 or stuff that we're unsure of, I believe that's why Mr. Helm did come and would we like Mr. Helm to give an overview?
Yes.
Good with council? Mr. Helm? Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. Just want to make it clear, I am the Chief of Staff, which is a Northern Health position, but I'm not representing Northern Health here. I'm representing myself as a physician. I'm a member of a Southeast group of physicians, etc., but I'm not officially representing Northern Health. So it's the perception that we have a narrow window of opportunity, maybe the only window that we're really going to have to make a big difference in what lies ahead for us. You'll hear a lot about flattening the curve. We have the opportunity to flatten the curve. We have some of the best folks in the world in what's happening in the province of BC. I think of Dr. Henry and Minister Adrian Dix with their daily news releases and sessions. It's working incredibly well. And what I would like to see is somehow if we can replicate that in Tumbler Ridge, so have some sort of collaborative attempt between scientific knowledge and political presence to get the message out reliably and responsibly to our residents and citizens. So the province and Northern Health have produced excellent guidelines, websites, all sorts of things. And obviously our health centre staff are doing their very best. They've got all sorts of ways they're trying innovatively to cope. And what they're trying to do is create separate streams so that people with respiratory infections are treated in a separate stream from everybody else. And everybody else includes elderly, vulnerable, otherwise sick, immunocompromised, all of that. So we're very lucky in the design of our building that we can actually try and do that so that people with respiratory infections who might have COVID-19 don't come into contact with the others. That's our goal. And the other goal is phone, phone, phone. Do not just show up sick. Phone either the clinic or phone the emergency room. And within a couple of days, I believe a Northern Health dedicated COVID line is going to be in operation. I can't say it today yet, but I think it's coming soon. And that's going to be a huge benefit because people will be encouraged to phone that rather than to try and come into the clinic. So we'll be keeping many people out of the health centre by doing that who could be potentially infecting other people. So the advice we're getting from all these levels of government and levels of healthcare are extremely good. The only thing is that they don't really know our reality in Tumbler Ridge, so they're not specifically geared to Tumbler Ridge. They are often urban-based. So what we need to do, I believe, is to fine-tune this for Tumbler Ridge and make it locally applicable. So what I'm suggesting to you is not going against anything else. It's just how do we apply it locally and make it locally relevant. And you've all heard about social distancing and what that means. If we can't get social distancing right, nobody can. I believe there's no place in the world where it's easier to get social distancing right than in Tumbler Ridge, but we've got to do it right. But you know, we have one grocery store, one pharmacy, one elementary school, one high school, one museum, one senior center, one major employer. And talking about employers, this is not the time for employers to request sick notes. This is the time for employers to trust their employees. If they're sick, they're sick. Don't send people who are sick in to get a sick note. That is crazy. So, in coming to speak to you, I just asked, what can the District of Tumbler Ridge do? You have a community centre that can be closed. You have seniors level, you have a museum, all of which are your buildings. Personally, I believe the time is here right now to actually do those things. We also have, I think, your ability to recommend at this stage to restaurants and other facilities that they adhere and they apply the 2-meter social distancing rule. In other parts of BC and Canada, that is being done by restaurants. There's no reason why it cannot be done here. And then we also need to remember how many people are going to be in self-isolation. Anyone from elsewhere in the world that's coming back to Canada, including all the snowbirds that will be coming back very soon. So how do we make it easier for them? And that just needs a community response, which I believe you are best equipped to lead. And that means things like deliveries, home deliveries from the grocery store, home deliveries from the pharmacy, home deliveries from the restaurants, and signage on these facilities. If you've come back from Arizona and you're at the pharmacy, there should be a sign saying, phone us, we'll sort it out for you. Don't come in, don't be in touch with other people. And this might need volunteers. We might need our service clubs to help with this kind of thing. But if we can't do it, I don't think anyone can. So the things, you know, for example, closing the community centre, this is not revolutionary and new. Delta and Surrey, I think, did it yesterday. Calgary did it yesterday. I believe that others within the Peace District are thinking about it. Quebec, Alberta have gone further than BC. I believe even today, BC, that number of 250 came down to 50 in terms of gatherings. You can see which way this is going. And the reason why I think it's particularly important for us, if we think of Tumbler Ridge, remember, we're a diagnostic and treatment center. We do not have inpatient beds. At best, we have one ambulance. Our regional hospitals, prior to COVID, are already often at capacity without much wiggle room. And we have to ask what happens if our staff gets sick. So, flatten the curve. It's getting a bit, what's the word, hackneyed. Everyone's using the word. But it's because it means something. It means we don't want to overwhelm the system. And without putting too fine a point on that, by doing this, we are going to save lives, in my view. It's that simple, of some of our most vulnerable people. So, as usual, Tumbler Ridge presents unique opportunities, also unique risks, because if we get into trouble here, we can get into trouble quickly. So, my belief is that it is better to act now. Just so you folks know, I'm not aware of any cases at the moment in Tumbler Ridge. I assume that anybody with an upper respiratory infection might have COVID. I think worst case scenario, but I'm not aware of positive cases. But just to remind you what that means, because a test takes up to a week to come back from our area. So that means a week ago, of people that were tested, there were no positive. It could be people that have not been tested that we don't know of that are positive. And that was a week ago. And as you know, things are changing day by day, hour by hour. So the point I'd like to make is that when it's obvious what you have to do, it's too late. So it does need a little bit of foresight and courage from elected officials like yourselves. But I think that my medical opinion is that the time is here to take action and to actually be a little bit ahead of what's going on elsewhere. I would like to see us collaborate through messaging and working together, whether that's through newspaper articles, Facebook posts, all sorts of things we could do together to provide credible, reliable information to our residents. And I think it's a time of stress for everybody, and it's wonderful to have the Provincial and the Northern Health websites there, but I think it's really nice for our residents. I mean, they're closer to us than they are to Prince George and to Victoria. So it's nice for residents, I believe, to have credible, not rumors, not stuff that's floating around there, but credible stuff from us. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I appreciate the opportunity to bring that to you. And I would just encourage folks to go out and have fun and enjoy the fresh air. Weather's beautiful, we live in a beautiful area, there's nothing to stop you from going outside. Snowmobiling, hiking, skiing, whatever. Enjoy.
Any questions from council? Councilor Majinski?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Helm, for the overview. And just one thing is Northern Health actually put that new number up on their website today. So I just posted on Facebook through my personal Facebook page, and the number is 1-844-645-7811, and that should be online now. It was on their website, so hopefully that'll alleviate the need to use the 811 that was being down, I believe. Yeah. So.
Councilor Majinski, you're talking in regards to the Northern Health COVID-19 line that's just for Northern Health?
Just for Northern Health, yeah, for the North.
My only concern there, I know it's operational for Prince George today. The information I was given was that outlying areas like ourselves might be in a day or two. So I might have got that, I might have got misinformation, but if it's working, that's wonderful. If it's not, it's going to be like tomorrow or the next day.
So it should be soon then.
Yeah.
Council, any more questions? Councilor Howe?
Dr. Helm, what do you say to those that say this is just a flu or more people die from the flu than this? What do you say to those people? Because there are those out there that feel that we're overreacting. I'm one of those that feel that this is an overreaction. And so I haven't really heard that from the province or anyone else. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly are those arguments out there. I mean, I think our job And my job as a medical professional is to bring the best science and the best health information to people. I think it's extremely scary for everybody. And that is why there's a need for transparency and for no agendas, just put it out there. And that's why I appreciate what the province is doing. You know, you've got Adrian Dix being very supportive but basically being guided by the medical expertise by Dr. Henry and her colleagues. And it's very different from what's happening elsewhere in this continent. I think we can be extremely blessed and we can be extremely grateful to hear that. So I believe those comments, this is just a form of flu and it's going to be gone in a month. And you know, there's a lot of wishful thinking. And I understand the wishful thinking. I wish it as well. But we have to confront the reality that we are dealing with. And we have to look at Italy and Spain and realize the nightmare that those places are going through. And the way I approach that is I say, if I had the luxury of speaking to a colleague in Italy and saying, well, if you knew then what you know now, and you know where we are in Tumbler Ridge, this is our little piece of paradise, what would you advise for us? I know what they would say. They wouldn't say this is a flu. They would say, get your act together, do everything you can. If you got a window, use the window. So I realize that the advice I'm giving you, I could be wrong. I think it's a very small chance that I and colleagues have got this wrong in our assessment of the threat. But if I've got it wrong, and others have it right, in a few months from now, our economy will be a little bit dented, and people will point a finger at me and I'll say, I did it with the best of intentions, I'm sorry I got it wrong. But if other people who think differently are getting it wrong and are saying, no, we don't need to do anything, don't worry about it, it's just a flu. If those folks get it wrong, then we're talking people dying unnecessarily in our community. So the stakes, I mean, the risks of getting it wrong in that way are enormous. And that's why I feel compelled to be trying to give you the best evidence that I can. I totally respect it's your decision to make. But that is why I want to bring, I think, the best scientific evidence I can to you at this point.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Helm, for coming in and speaking to us today. And I think, you know, there's a lot of stuff to read on the internet. And, you know, I was reading a 23-year-old girl from Calgary who's in Spain and saying, trust me, we didn't think it was a big deal. We were going along, living our lives like it wasn't going to happen, and it did. And the window closed, and now they're in the same boat where they're scrambling and trying to, you know, people are getting sick. And you know, why wouldn't we be proactive? Why wouldn't we consider shutting down our centers? And I don't think there's going to be a wrong. I think we're making the right choice. And if it all turns out to be great, well then perfect.
Councillor?
You mentioned something about, you know, this is not the time for them to go and get a sick note. Has that information been passed on to our major employers in Tumbler Ridge?
I took action on that today. I hope it's gone out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another point I have is, what advice are we getting from Northern Health, the province, and the federal government as to this? Like, to me, this seems like us stepping ahead of the curve, and I don't know that is the correct thing for us to do in Tumbler Ridge. I think about the trickle-down effect. If we shut down, particularly what concerns me is the community center. I'm okay if we were to shut down the museum and the old age center, or what's it called, Willow Hall. You know, that makes sense to me. Those are the people that are most affected, and I'm surprised it's even running now, that they didn't make the decision themselves to shut it down. But what concerns me in the community centers, that's where our childcare spaces are. How do we deal with that fallout for the rest of the community? And what I mean by that is, we shut that down. I don't know how many kids are down there, 20 or 25 kids or something like that. How does that affect our major employer in town when people say, listen, I got to stay home now. I have to stay home because I have no childcare for 2 weeks. And does that trickle down effect? If we do this first and we start this first, does that make our major employer in town go, you know what? We've reached the point where the blockades have really had its toll. We can't get our ships to port. Now we're having this COVID problem. Now we got our own community stopping our childcare, and they decide at that point to lay everybody off in Tumbler Ridge, or start some form of layoffs. I think they need to be in the conversation. If that's my take on looking at council, is that if we are going to go down this road, we would need to have them in the conversation, would we not? I mean,
So just in regards to the daycare, I did have that chat with Mr. Wall this afternoon before coming into the meeting, and there is an option about to have a different access into there, so that could be looked at and discussed tonight in regards to keeping that open and having access to it. I do know Alberta's actually shut down all licensed daycares. They did that. I believe it started today, but they did announce it yesterday, asking them for them to close, and they understand what that's going to do to the families in Alberta. So I actually think we're going to see more and more come from the government once they start realizing it and stuff. So I got from the guy. Well, we have question and answer at the end. I have Chris on the line to speak. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'd like firstly to address a comment Councillor Howe made about the Children's Centre. And the average person that uses the Children's Care Centre is not the mine workers, because they can't look after children for their 12 hours or so. So the majority of people that are utilizing the centre are the 9-to-5ers or people a lot of teachers and whatnot. And yeah, I would back up what you mentioned, Acting Mayor, is that with the school closures in other provinces, they're including childcare centres as well. And the Children's Centre, if they wish to remain open, they do have their own private entrance. We can talk about that as well, leaving it open.
Go ahead, Mr. Earl.
Yeah, now just to answer some of Councillor Howe's comments, I mean, I think those are relevant comments. Shutting down the community centre has consequences, and nobody should be under any, it's not just, oh, it's closed now. I mean, there are consequences to doing this. But one of the consequences, I mean, this is the place where lots of kids hang out together. The thing with kids and with schools is that kids don't get that sick with this, but they are incredibly infectious. They can be highly infectious without appearing very sick. And so what one's trying to do in the community is actually stop the spread of the virus, because if one kid passes it on to another kid, who passes it on to the grandpa, that grandpa's now at risk. And if the kids hadn't been together in the community centre, you might have avoided that case. So it's not just we have to stop the old folks from getting together because they're at risk. They are at risk, but the importance of social distancing in other respects is extremely important, because ultimately it affects the older folks. So I think people forget that sometimes.
So I got Councillor Lehman, then Councillor Kirby, and then Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. There's a couple of things regarding daycare. If I had a child in daycare, I'm not too sure I'd want to be sending them to daycare when this is going around. I think it might not be a bad idea to have them at home. And like Dr. Helm said, they seem to be a breeding ground for illness. And I think that's part of the reason they closed the schools, is because of the illnesses that comes from kids at the schools, and they bring them home. And the other thing is, Canuma is well aware of what's going on. They've sent everybody a 5-page email that some of the options that people are going to have. So they're dealing as best they can with it, I think. And I mean, nobody can tell what the impact is going to be on Canuma. Who knows how many people are going to be affected? But I think some people may think that maybe they have it and they don't. And because of the delay in testing, that's gonna be a problem. And I don't know if that can be resolved, but I mean, you know, from the length of time it takes to them being out of swabs. You know, there's a lot of things that could go wrong.
Okay, Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Our healthcare in the area isn't strong right now. How many times have we had to come to the aid of the clinic to top up when we don't have, you know, a nurse for emergency rooms, or we don't have labs? We just don't have the staff. And so if we can do one thing by social distancing or taking some precautions, in the long run, it's going to take the stress off of our hospitals, because that's where everybody's going to end up going to. So I think we've been proactive so far that we still got to keep on that same path and doing these kind of things for our residents, which has been our top priority, is healthcare.
Councillor Majinski?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Kukalka. I'm just going to touch base on a personal experience that I've had involving a state of emergency in a community that I lived in the past. And it's just kind of to just do an overview of like the province's participation in the government. And at that time, they dealt with everything after the fact, and it was a little too late. And I think the only way that community actually survived and was able to get evacuated because of the community and their one employer as well. The one employer actually saved half of the town, for one. It was of a flooding, and the residents were made aware by themselves to actually evacuate and had help with getting out. So a lot of it was based from the community outwards. So the province did come in, and so did the military to come in, but that was after the initial damage was done. So I think we want to be ahead of this before the damage is done, and have our plans going forward before the province, because our instance would be a lot different in a smaller community compared to maybe a bigger metropolitan area, southern BC, etc.
Councillor Howell?
Dr. Helm, do you have any idea of what we've had for community transmission in British Columbia? Like, is there any numbers? Last thing I seen, 150, 160 people in BC have it. One died.
Four died now.
Four died.
The great majority are from out of Canada, from other parts of the world. The great majority, but community transmission is there, and I mean, more to the point is the example, and so the one issue is the daily, you know, if you're looking at the daily increases in the number of new cases, that's worrisome. And when you look at these curves, they tend, you know, you get a long period of time when it's fairly low, then it's called an exponential curve. So all of a sudden it starts climbing, and then just, that's what you want. What we're trying to do is prevent that. What one's trying to do is accept it's going to increase further. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but we want to do that. Even if it lasts a bit longer, that's okay, because it just means, well, it's not good. It means our healthcare system has the capacity to deal with it. If this happens, that's what people are seeing in Italy and Spain, and it's, you know, I think our news media has been doing a reasonably good job about telling us how bad it is there. You've got nationwide lockdowns and hundreds of people dying, thousands. It's pretty bleak. So the reason I'm speaking to you is I believe we have a window to change that curve, but it's not like if we decide to reconvene in a week and reassess, it could well be too late. No, the reason I'm here tonight, now we've got the window. This is the window, and I don't think we're going to get many windows.
So I guess I just have one comment. And you mentioned in regards to grocery delivery and stuff, and you know, I own the grocery store in town, so trying to stay away from that. But we are been looking at that, and that was before these questions. So we actually are thinking the same thing and getting into delivery for you know, seniors and people that are at risk or maybe at risk, you know, whether somebody has respiratory issues and stuff.
And people that
So-
quarantine, because you're going to have lots, and we're assuming everyone follows the recommendations. There's no one policing this. It's an honesty system. If you're quarantined, that's 14 days. How do you get your stuff?
Yeah, so we are looking at that as well, but I do, yeah, Council, any more questions for Mr. Hahn? Go ahead, Mr. Sorry.
My question has to do with, like you say, flattening the curve, and so right now we want to keep it down low at about this level. But what's the risk that in the future we've done a good job keeping it here, and then we think we've done well, you let off on those restrictions, and then suddenly you get that spike going up? How do we manage that? And if council does decide to close the community center, what's the amount of time you think they should expect to keep it closed for?
Right, so those are really good questions. I don't think anyone can give you the answer, how long does it need to be closed for. So the best is to, I would imagine, do it for 30 days or choose a number that's not like 3 days or something, a decent number, but make it clear that it'll be reviewed near the time and either extended or whatever. But the risk that elsewhere in the world one has seen, if the relaxation comes too early, if you think everything's okay and you relax your restrictions, there have been cases of a second spike in previous pandemics as well, which is even worse than the first spike, and then you're in big trouble. So unfortunately, for what we're talking about here, you know, it might be longer than one thinks because you don't want to get that second spike. But my advice there would simply be not, you know, we've got experts, Dr. Henry and her colleagues. I mean, that's their job, is to work out things like that. And so by that stage, you know, if council decides to take these measures tonight,
participant exiting.
Keith Bertrand.
If that decision gets taken tonight, I would imagine within a week it's going to be standard across the province. I'd be surprised if it isn't. So then everyone's going to be in the same boat. And I think it would be foolish for individual places to decide we're at stage. It's just better to go with the province and with Northern Health because they'll have really good experts making those recommendations.
How come we never got to this with H1N1? Like I'm still having a hard time understanding the difference between this COVID-19 and H1N1 or the typical flu, and that still has not been explained to me why the rhetoric or why the build-up. I understand 4 people have died from this now in British Columbia, but I don't see it yet. I want you to sell it to me is what I'm looking for here, right?
So,
I got to be able to sell it when I leave this building. When I go talk to somebody and explain to them why we've shut down the community center and all these people are looking for jobs or need new jobs or whatever's going to happen with that. How do I sell it to them?
yeah, so the first thing with flu is that we have a vaccine. And we understand flu very well, and the vaccine is never perfect, but it does a pretty good job. But in spite of that, you know, the old and the infirm die from flu every year. Large numbers of people do die from flu. And H1N1, and we can add SARS as well. For some reason, they didn't become as bad as people thought they were going to, and we were all extremely grateful. But what we were scared of in those situations was exactly what we're seeing now. This is a pandemic. This is the worst thing that has happened to the world in over a century. The previous example is the Spanish flu, which was 1918. So it's a long time, but many of us have been saying, at some point, it's the nature of the way we live and we travel, and there's so many of us on the planet, and we're so closely confined together. It's a recipe for a pandemic, and here we are, and we cannot change what's happened. We wish we could, but the easiest way to sell it is to say, don't look at BC, look at what happened in China. China, by the way, is not necessarily all bad news because their cases are going down over time. So it seems that they are through the worst. We can look at South Korea and see, or Look at Taiwan and see how come they've done relatively well compared to China. What did they do that was different? And then we can look at Italy, and we can look at Spain, and actually much of Europe now, and the UK. And we can say, look, what went wrong there? How come they're in so much trouble? And are we just, 3 or 4 weeks behind them? And that's the worry. And because if that happens here, that's that exponential curve. And I know that there are a couple of futures here for us, and the one future is that spike and that exponential curve. And I don't even want to begin to think of what that's going to mean for us in British Columbia and up in the north. And the other alternative is that we're proactive at this point. We use the window and cross fingers that people, because we want people to buy into this. We don't want just a proclamation from council. We actually want citizen involvement. So if folks go to a restaurant, for example, and see that there's no attention to 2-meter distancing, I mean, they need to call those people out or do something. So we want citizen involvement in that sense, to say this is important, and it's not just important, it's life-saving. I mean, it cannot be more important, because we're talking a month or 2 months from now, and we're not just talking the elderly and the vulnerable. We're actually talking all of us, because there are young people that die from this, that not many, it's not zero either. So everyone is actually, maybe not the young kids, but even young adults are at risk. It's not a zero risk. So I know which curve I want to see. I don't want to see the system overwhelmed. And so, one doesn't want to get over dramatic about it, but we're talking about saving the lives of our citizens by being proactive, in my view.
So I got myself and then Councillor Lehman. I don't get the whole numbers up, and maybe somebody from council will be able to say that they watched it, but I believe I heard today at the store from a customer, a pretty good friend, is we increased over from 441 to 5, so an 100 increase in 24 hours with people that have been COVID-19, like confirmed cases. 124 hours increase. So, Councillor Lehman?
Yeah, I'm just curious. So if we close the rec center and Willow Hall and the museum, say we close it for a month until the 15th of April, and depending on how many people in this area get tested and the test results come back, we should have some sort of an indicator as to how much we're affected by this, and if we are at all. But the thing is, we wait for 2 weeks and see what we have, and then at the end of another 2 weeks, maybe it's like the increase we had today, and you see every day in this thing, and then all of a sudden you get that, you have maybe 10 cases that you didn't have the 2 weeks before. So it's going to be hard to, I think, to figure out when you want to take these closures off.
Yeah, and it is changing day by day, as you know. So all I can say is the medical recommendation I'm bringing to you today is the best that I can provide today. For me, my vision here is that this is not a one-off visit, that this is something that we collaborate on, and day by day, week by week, it changes, and we work together, and we inform the public critically of what's going on.
Yeah, I don't have really a problem with closing them. It's just that, you close it and then nobody in Tumbler tests positive, or nobody in this region tests positive, and you're wondering, well, why are we closing it? But you never know when it's going to start, and that's what I think people have to realize.
So sure, and I think my feeling is that if you do 30 days, for example, by that stage, we're going to know. It's not going to be a maybe. It's going to be, we've done an amazing job, or it was too late, or something. But we're going to know one way or another. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Kirby and then Councillor Howe.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If we do choose to close, do we have to put an end date? Can it be till further notice up until we just decide. Does it have to have an amount?
Nope.
No?
Whenever, right now, the motion that I prepared for council is indefinitely.
Yeah.
So that would allow it to be reevaluated when you're ready.
Yeah, and that's what I think. I think the key is if we're going to do it, which I think that I'm getting a feeling that most are in favor of that, I would sooner do it as soon as we can, and then we can open things up when we get all systems go.
Councillor Hell?
Well, and that's just it. We have to open it again, right?
Right.
So we have to also make that choice.
Yeah.
To come in and say, oh yeah, COVID-19's gone, we're gonna reopen it. What if we're wrong then?
Well,
Right, that's,
That's a part of this conversation as well, right? Like,
and another point, and, I mean, Dr. Helm is the expert here, I understand that fully. But we are not being told by the province or the federal government or anyone at this point that this is what we should do. We should be closing down public spaces. We are not being told that from anyone there. We're taking Dr. Helm's word, who I think is a fantastic doctor. He's been mine for years. I've got tons of respect for the man. There's a fundamental difference between Canada and there's a fundamental difference between Tumbler Ridge and Italy and China. Our population density in Canada is 4 people per square kilometer. Italy is 206 people per square kilometer, right? It's even less up where we are up here. So to me, I feel that we are creating panic, stress. I think it's going to be a bunch of other issues that we are going to run into when we start closing places like the community center. What at that point there is stopping a company like Canuma from saying, if they're doing it all in town, we're doing it as well. I have no problem doing it in places like where the older folks are, but I honestly feel that we should wait till we hear from the provincial government. It's a lot easier pill for our citizens to swallow to say the provincial government comes in and says, they've told us we have to do this now, we have to do it. The provincial government just changed it from 250 to 50, which again, we've talked before that this 250 number or 50 number, there's no science behind that at all. They're just picking a number and hoping for the best. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? So it's, my take on it is just wait. We know there's an announcement coming from the government tomorrow, and we can wait to see what they have to say about it.
Is there any more questions for Mr. Helm? Clarification? Staff, you're good, all yours? Mr. Wall?
Council's got a number of decisions to make on the public spaces. Do you mind if I ask you, I'm gonna name the public space and you can give your recommendation to council on what you think should be done with it? Community center.
My recommendation is to close it.
Town hall.
So I think it is possible to do really good social distancing here. I'm not sure that that would apply at this point. I mean, it's a big building, so I think there is room to individualize. So, I mean, that's a complex question. How much work can be done from home? Can people work from home? If people can work from home and you're left with a skeleton staff here, there's hardly any contact. So that's a graded answer, but it's not an easy one to answer. But we can't shut down essential services. So no one's saying shut down the health center or shut down the grocery store. So, and no one's saying shut down the provincial government. Municipal government has to continue. I think the recommendation should be that anyone that can work from home should work from home.
And there's always people recommending to shut down the government, so don't worry about that. Visitor center.
Tough one. There are questions there. Are you actually putting visitor center staff at risk? There are always health issues here. There are risk issues. The problem there probably isn't your ones and twos coming in, but you might it's spring break. You might get a whole 30 kids coming in together. 50 kids coming in together. Once you've got 50 kids together in the visitor center for half an hour, you're contravening the provincial thing, So The other thing, I'm not absolutely sure that this all needs to be done in one fell swoop, as it were. Because the questions you've asked me are slightly grayer for me than communities, and believe me, you know my involvement with the museum. I mean, you can actually make a case for the museum that you've got front desk staff who can supervise how many come in and make sure that the distancing and everything is there. But the problem is there that you can create a slippery slope. So you've made one exception, now you're going to make another exception. You could say at Willow Hall there'll never be more than 5 people together at one time. But I'm just concerned about creating exceptions from a perspective of then what happens next.
So, so you've touched on Willow Hall and you've touched on the museum, but can you give your recommendation on those 2 spaces, whether you'd recommend to council that they remain open or closed?
So museums across Canada have closed. Fair enough, higher visitation, but there's a principle there that they have closed. My medical recommendation, I just cannot find a good medical reason to say no, keep that open.
Okay, and the last one would be childcare center.
So the puzzle to me, there's a puzzle here. Why has, I know we're on spring break, and I believe Alberta, for example, has closed schools. I think Saskatchewan has closed schools. So I suspect, can't be sure, that one reason why our schools have not been formally closed is because people are just waiting to see what happens because it's spring break. So the Ministry of Education or even the Ministry of Health have a little bit of a window that they've got. They don't have to tell us immediately, schools, they've got a little bit of time. They've got the luxury of time, which we don't. But I've got a feeling that's why. So if you say, let's just say, for example, schools will be closed. So how do you defend closing schools but keeping daycare open? Because you've still got kids in close contact with each other. So, I'm trying to answer your question as logically as possible. And I think a lot of the guidance will come from what happens with schools as well. I'd be, looking at how BC has approached things in general, I would be surprised, given that Saskatchewan and Alberta have gone in one direction, why would BC take a different direction? I mean, Alberta and Saskatchewan are jolly good folks as well, advising them.
So my opinion on the daycare.
Well, I see daycare as a school. My feeling, personal feeling, not a Northern Health opinion, it's why are schools not closed already? That's my personal opinion.
I appreciate the advice you've given. So council, you might want to, if you have specific questions on those buildings, you may want to ask them now, but those are the areas where you exert your influence where council can make the decision that we're going to close these to the public, or they're going to remain open. So again, that's the visitor center, museum, town hall, community center, and Willow Hall. From what I heard from Dr. Helm, community center is your strongest recommendation to close, as well as Willow Hall.
Yes, but for me to say shut the museum, I think that's telling you something.
Any more questions for Mr. Helm? Councillor Helm?
This is kind of a little bit off topic of the closing stuff down thing, but you mentioned something about doing home deliveries. So how would we go about doing home deliveries where we could assure that whoever is packaging up medical supplies or food or whatever is going to someone's house, how can we ensure that that person is not infected and that could be the one person in town who's infected and goes out and gives it to all the seniors and they get infected through them? So like how long, like do we have any idea of how long it lives on a surface for, or?
So people that are quarantined for 14 days, and the idea is to assume during those 14 days that they might be infected. So when we say home deliveries, my vision is not knock on the door, open the door, say hello, shake hands. No, this is doorstep delivery.
Understood.
And it's arranged by phone and it's dropped on the doorstep.
Yep.
And the challenge might be how to pay for it. I'm not going to get involved in that, but that's going to be the challenge, is how that works out.
So I'm not talking about the person in the home infecting the person who's delivering it. I'm talking about those people that are in self-isolation 14 days, they're not even sick. But the person who is delivering the food, how do we guarantee that that person is not sick and actually infecting all these people as they go around?
Yes.
Because the health center or the pharmacy is a fantastic example. I mean, anyone who's sick is going to be rolling in and out of that place. And if they're making up packages and then dropping them off at people's door, how does the virus not get from that package or the bottle that they picked up, or they coughed on it, or somebody picked up their Flintstone vitamins or whatever and delivered through? How do we stop that? Do you have any?
Sure. So what the pharmacy is really trying to do as well is to stop sick people from coming in there unnecessarily. If your question is the person that's doing the delivery, could they actually be infectious? So we don't want anyone that is sick, even if you just got a runny nose and what seems to be a cold, a fever, whatever. Assume, my assumption, it's a catastrophic assumption, but my assumption is that everyone right now, and the majority of people that are sick have got rhinovirus, adenovirus, influenza, majority do. But my assumption, I work from the principle that everybody with a respiratory infection might have COVID. So your person that's doing the deliveries, if they are not well, they shouldn't be doing it. They should be self-isolating if they're sick. Now, no system is absolutely perfect, so the question I know you're going to ask me next is, can they be asymptomatic and still transmit the virus? And there is uncertainty about that. And I don't want to say it's impossible, it's unlikely, absolutely impossible, probably not, but all we can do is strive to get as good as we can. If we're trying to achieve perfection here, we probably will fail, but we've got to do the best we can. And if it's asymptomatic people doing the deliveries, you could maybe make a case that the elderly and otherwise sick shouldn't be volunteering for this. Maybe that's reasonable. Maybe you want to use younger, those are details.
Okay.
Councilor Majewski?
I just have a comment and possibly maybe ask a recommendation from Mr. Helm if possible. A lot of talk about social distancing, and we've been following suit with the states at 50 people per room as a gathering. Today they've reduced it down to 10 people per room within, and a minimum of 2 meters per individual, so within contact. So if we want to go to that extreme, would there be a recommendation to put a halt to social gatherings, birthday parties, organizations, nonprofit groups, any type of group, anything larger than what would be 10 people? Would that be something deemed unnecessary at this time, or would that be something that we should probably consider if the larger centers are going to be doing that? And we're not that far behind of what the states have been doing and what we've been doing to follow up.
Sure. I actually was not aware of that. I was aware of the BC recommendation today going from 250 to 50. It's hard to keep up with everything. I haven't been following the US news. But if they're saying 10, I mean, that is huge. Pretty darn important. I would think they do have a very real problem there, and they're struggling. Once again, we are blessed in British Columbia with the people we have, and with the example that's been set so far, we're light years ahead of other jurisdictions in the world. But I think that is why, currently the BC recommendation is 50, but that just re-emphasizes tomorrow it could be 10 in BC. If that's the case, obviously, who's going to fight against it? Who's going to say sure? That brings all those implications, but from your perspective, I think this is day one of dealing with it, like one deals with the most obvious and the clearest cases today, and recognizing that tomorrow there might be a need for another meeting if things have changed.
Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was just thinking, apparently the provincial government's making an announcement tomorrow. I'm just wondering if they're going to close schools. But I'm thinking if we're, debating on whether or not we want to close all these public places, why don't we just say, okay, once the BC government says, okay, we're closing schools, that's it, we close everything here.
Okay, any more questions for Mr. Helm, and then we can debate. Sorry, I'm not, I'm not trying to thing, but, go ahead, Councillor Helm.
You'd mentioned also about putting a message out. Have you given Mr. Wall an idea of the types of things you'd like in that message? I've just been writing notes as you've been going through with, like, we talk about the clinic's phone number, and you said that the emergency phone number for the clinic. So I know Curtis has talked about a provincial line, but I know there's 2 other numbers to reach the clinic. Would that be something we would post out, or like is there, and like there's a whole bunch of stuff I wrote down, adhere and apply to social distancing of 2 meters, 50 people for a gathering, the procedure to get tested in the community. Like, do you want us to like put some type of a posting like that out? Like,
Yeah, so thank you. I think the best time to put that posting out is when we know, and it's not a provincial COVID, there is a provincial COVID line, but we're actually talking about a Northern Health COVID line.
okay,
Which is even better because people in the North understand the North better.
sure.
So I'm anticipating, and Councillor Mazinski might be right, it might be open already, but I think we need to know that before we put that out because, if you call there, you're going to have trained staff that are able to triage you on the phone, and they can say, no, you just don't worry about it, you're okay, just go home, or you're fine, or we're not quite happy about you, you need to go and see a doctor and maybe get a swab, in which case we have a way of dealing with this at the health centre without mixing them with the regular folks we don't want to mix them with, or maybe you're that sick that you need to go to emerge, but I mean, that COVID line can actually do that, all of that.
Okay.
And it's going to be if I had a personal concern about this, I would want to call that first. Now I'm assuming that we're not going to have because the 811 apparently got overwhelmed. So it sounds great, call 811. You've got to wait 10 hours to talk to someone. I'm just making that number up, but I mean, it doesn't serve the purpose, right? So one hopes and assumes that this COVID line is actually going to have a reasonable time to get answered. But if it works, that's my go-to place. And then, one wants to give people options. So the clinic is there. 811 is still there. But from what I understand, that COVID line is 24/7 through the night.
Okay. Yeah. So it's our live feed is definitely working because my phone's lighting up and people keep commenting in. Are you aware of any more deaths in BC?
There was an announcement today that the total is 4.
Yeah. So, and 7 in Canada. So we obviously have people watch because they keep messaging me, and they're obviously hearing all of our discussions. So there's obviously concerned residents in Tumbler Ridge as well when they're concerned that. But yeah, so there's now 4 in BC.
There's 230 today in Italy.
So
230 deaths.
That's what they said this morning.
It's up to 1,800.
Any more questions for Mr. Helm? Mr. Wall?
Yep.
I'm just curious about, and you see quite often on social media, about them saying if you had the flu back in November, December, you probably already had it. Do you know any truth to that kind of?
No, I mean, you can argue that maybe this thing has been in North America for longer than we think, and it was just undiagnosed in the beginning. But it's unlikely that if you had something then that it was COVID. It's far more likely that you had flu or a type of flu or something like that. Never say never, but I think the chances of that would be extremely remote. So the problem is that most of us have got some immunity to the flu, and especially if we get our flu shot, we've got reasonably good immunity. Not one of us has the slightest immunity to COVID. 0.
Councilor Majinski?
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I think the initial outbreak was in January, was it not, in the end of January? So that would kind of alleviate some of those questions there. And just to follow up on that, like, since that was such a big outbreak at the time, and China knew it was such a big outbreak, they built that 1,000 room hospital in a week because they knew it was that big of an issue. So they weren't messing around when that came about and when the outbreak was starting to spread. And so they acted on it very quickly. So, and that got put to use right away. So.
Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Dr. Helm, as far as prescriptions go, there's been talk that there's certain people that are suffering from high blood pressure, certain things that there's a lack of having their, or possibility that they won't get their prescriptions filled. And just on that, and just on prescriptions in general, if you have a reoccurring prescription that's once a month, for example, is it better for those people to phone in and possibly just get those picked up, like not to see the doctor? Is there a way that residents can do that without coming down to the clinic?
Yeah. So one of the areas where we are most fortunate in Tumbler Ridge is our pharmacists. We're just so lucky to have Charissa and Renee. They're totally into this. This is the kind of lateral thinking which we should be doing because, sure, I mean, there might be some fine-tuning that you need with your meds or anything, but whether it gets done at this visit or whether it gets done 3 months down the road probably is not going to make a huge difference. So if we can save you this visit, you can talk to your doc on the phone, maybe just, is everything okay? Yeah, that's fine. And either a delivery from the pharmacy or just a phone call and pick up. That's, you know, because we say we're trying to separate the streams. Does it mean we're going to get that perfect? Probably not. We're going to do as good of a job as we can. But if we can actually save someone that's elderly and frail and vulnerable from coming into the health center to see a doctor and then to go to a pharmacy to pick something up, if we can save them that trouble, that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
And I know the pharmacy is right behind that.
Good. Excellent.
Councillor Howe?
Yeah, I have one more, and I don't know how you can answer this one. This is to do with Northern Health's response. So we had heard in the news that there were 2 people diagnosed with COVID in the Lower Mainland, in the Fraser Coastal, and they were able to travel back to where they live into Northern BC, into the Northern Health region. And that was the first 2 cases that I had heard were in our region. Why is it that Northern Health is not allowed to tell us, or is refusing to tell us, which communities have the tested positive people in it? Where we see on the news in Montreal, for instance, they give you the exact name of the residence where COVID has broken out in a old age home, or the one in Seattle, or the one in Vancouver. But us here in the north are not allowed to know, is it in Chetwynd or Prince George or Tumbler Ridge? And do you think that that will change? Should we expect that at some point they're going to go, yeah, there's 6 cases in Prince George and 2 in Fort St. John and 1 in Tumbler Ridge?
Yes, so again, I cannot speak for Northern Health, and I shouldn't be speaking for Northern Health, but I actually wasn't aware of that. You're giving me news here that I wasn't aware of. I know that new cases are reported according to health, so when Dr. Henry gives the daily update, she actually mentions so many are from coastal and so many are from island and so many are from interior, etc. And I wasn't aware of new cases in Northern Health. You must remember that, you know, those people that have been diagnosed, I mean, they are going to be quarantined. So I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it or not, but I mean, people who've been diagnosed are quarantined for a good length of time, and if they're not getting better, you know, it's a different story. But I mean, if there's any positive news here, is that the majority of people still do reasonably well, and so that's why we really don't want people to panic. We want people to have a measured response, accepting that this is serious, understanding how social distancing will prevent us from getting into big trouble, being worried about the vulnerable, but at the same time, I hate to put it this way, this pandemic could actually have been a lot worse. We've got something like, if you compare the different countries, maybe a 3% mortality. Now you can argue it's a bit higher or a bit lower than that, but thereabouts. I mean, you could have had a 20% mortality. So this is a pretty grim situation we're going into, but it actually could have been a lot worse. People are going to learn a lot from this, so that if and when 20 years from now there's another one, people are prepared differently. Maybe.
Thanks. I actually like your comment there when you say don't panic. You know, that was kind of the topic that started amongst customers and residents, obviously the residents.
Announcing participant.
So it's about don't panic and stuff like that. So I like when you make that comment and this, you know, ways to help is that social distancing, washing hands, stuff like that. And I think, you know, residents should be aware of that. I mean, you make the comment. Hey Keith, can you mute your phone?
Sorry?
Can you mute your phone? Thank you. You mentioned about, you know, I think it is all of our jobs, including councils, but also residents, to help take care of our neighbors, our most maybe vulnerable, our seniors, and, you know, anybody that maybe, not just a senior, a person that's young and has a medical condition. And I do believe that's all of our jobs. And, you know, the word don't panic. I really appreciate that comment.
Yeah, that's right. And thank you for mentioning the hand washing. We haven't even touched on that, but I mean, I take every opportunity. You know, people can be washing their hands 30 or 40 times a day. Soap and water, hand sanitizer if there's no soap and water, but soap and water is very good. So wash your hands frequently, 20 seconds, all over the place. Don't touch other people if you can possibly help it. And don't touch your face. Get out of the habit of touching your face. And those are, and keep your distance, social distancing. You know, they're really good habits to get into.
Comments. Councilor Majinski.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Coco. That number is up and running. It'll send you to a call handler, so just got confirmed. So.
Okay, any more questions for Mr. Hell? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you can just hold out in case once we get into a debate, you know, there's maybe somebody needs clarity. I hope not. But,
Okay.
I mean, I think we've hammered you pretty good there, and we appreciate you coming forward. Like you said, you're here as a doctor and giving a medical opinion, and you're not speaking for Northern Health. So definitely appreciate you coming and doing that. Thank you. Again, I know it's not on the agenda that was handed out, but we did kind of staff. I did. I shouldn't say we. I asked staff to come up with just a recommendation in regards to the discussion. So I had one kind of thrown together, and Mr. Wald writing it up for me. I'm not sure before we read it if we want to just discuss it, but I mean, again, if we're going to debate it, if somebody wants to put a recommendation on the floor, I'd rather debate the recommendation. Councillor Hall?
That the District of Tumbler Ridge closed to the public indefinitely in response to the risks posed by COVID-19, Visitor Information Center, the museum, Willow Hall.
Effective
This evening.
I think you wanted, sorry to cut you off. Like you need a bit of time.
Yeah, I mean, whichever facilities we close, we need to get in touch with the people and get it closed down, so that make it tomorrow, sometime tomorrow, make that much easier.
Well, we're talking about that it needs to be done immediately, so whatever, it needs to be new.
Well, if you can just be a time, I think, sorry to cut you off, I think we just need a time there to give time to reach staff and other people that aren't staff.
Sure. Make it new then, I guess.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Lehman. Okay, discussion. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I did have a chance just quickly talk to Sarah before the meeting tonight, and the Visitor Center has come up with some good ideas on how they could still put on some programming even though the Visitor Center was closed. They've talked about putting on a scavenger hunt that, you know, that they could give out through the door online. Just certain things, if we're having tourists come in, if they were to phone ahead, they could have packages made up for them. They could still give out pamphlets on where to hike, because these are all things that we have in our backcountry that you can still social distance yourself. So whether it's closed to the public, but staff can still work and provide programming through Facebook, etc. That's just something we should think about, because you know, even at the museum, there could be some ways that you can still do some work without actually seeing the public.
Okay, I got Councillor Noberry.
Thank you, Thank you, Chair. I am in favor of closing all those, but I think we should be adding the community center to that closure list as well. I didn't believe I heard that. Is that correct?
Yep, you didn't.
Yep, correct.
Okay. Well, I'll speak to the motion as it stands. I think we absolutely should be closing these facilities as of the dangers that COVID is presenting. I mean, the World Health Organization has called this a pandemic. Many other places have closed their facilities. Surrey, Langley, Delta. Merritt also, like my wife just sent me, Merritt has closed down. They're very similar size community with and my concern is our capacity in our health services, and that we don't have the capacity to take in those people. I'd like to share a bit of an anecdotal story that I have about some trusting people self-isolation. I know that the BC government has recommended that people self-isolate, and I know of specific cases that people are not following these recommendations, and it's putting people at risk, and these people are coming into our facilities and infecting others. I know of somebody who was at a conference down in the United States, and they've been within the community, they've been out and about, and they haven't chosen to self-isolate against recommendations by our province, by our health authorities. Another area of concern is the dental conference that has happened recently, and the BC health authorities have cited that conference as a source of infection. And I know that there's at least one person from Tumbler Ridge who has attended that conference. That person has a spouse, they have children, they're kissing them goodnight, and those children or spouses are going out into the community, potentially spreading that disease. So I think we absolutely need to take this seriously.
Okay. Thanks, Councilor Norbury. Councilor Howe?
Just Councilor Kirby made a comment about tourists coming here, and the Vic Center needs to be able to continue on and doing this. You were a tourist up until a couple of days ago until you canceled your trip out of the country, right? I don't foresee a lot of people coming to Tumbler Ridge while this is on the go, especially when we start shutting everything down. So the fact that we're concerned about what the tourists are going to do for 2 weeks, I am not concerned about that one iota, not one bit. This is going to be news that's going to go out and say Tumbler Ridge is shutting everything down as well. So,
Councilor Majinski and then Councilor Kirby.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So if the motion on the floor does not include the community center, and we're not going to add that in, that'll be a completely separate motion.
You can add it as a amendment. We can debate this motion and vote on it, whether it's carried or thing, and then add it. Either way.
May I speak on my thoughts on the community center?
Yep.
Since we are in the spring break in BC, so a lot of those kids currently that would be in school are most likely at the community center. That's my only concern right now. So they are probably utilizing it more than they would be if they were in school. So that's why I think that it should be also be added to the list.
Would you like to make an amendment to the motion on the floor?
If possible, yes, please.
What?
I'd like to make an amended motion to add the community center to the list of Willow Hall, Visitor Center, and Museum.
Okay, seconder? I'll second that. Okay, debate the amended motion. Councilor Howe.
I specifically put this motion on the floor so we could talk about the three that I thought were the low-hanging fruit, that we could get them dealt with out of the way. Mr. Wall knows what our intention is, staff knows which way we're going. Then we could discuss the ones that I think need more time to debate. That's why I specifically left them out, and I think we should continue to leave it out until this one's passed. Then we can bring that one up. And if that one passes, then you continue on. But I specifically left it out so that we didn't have a long debate on the three others.
I got Councilor Norbury and, Councilor Kirby, then Councilor Norbury. Go ahead,
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just in response to Councillor Howe on my thoughts on the visitor center, I just thought it was great that we have a staff at the Vic Center coming up with ideas where they could help provide a curriculum to kids that are on spring break without actually having the visitor center open. And, you know, it doesn't have anything to do with tourism. It's just like the grocery store is going to deliver. They want to still deliver a product if it's something that can help the community. That was all. And I'd like to thank Sarah for coming up with some out of the box ideas on how to still engage with the community.
Councillor Norbury, then Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Chair. I think that I'm in favor of the amendment, as I think this is the opportunity to discuss if we want to have the community center closed. And I think that at this time it is vital that we add in the community center to the closures, because that's the biggest risk of cross-contamination. You know, I'll go back again to some more anecdotal story. I know of, and I'm sorry, I'm really not trying to add to the hysteria. I am telling people, stay calm. This is a small thing, but I think in that instance, we need to change our mentality of hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And I think, going back to my story, again, people are not self-isolating. I know of somebody who was in Italy up to 2 weeks ago, and they were in the community center walking around. They were not showing symptoms, but it's showing that self-isolation is not something people are taking seriously, and we need to take adequate steps to make sure that people are not being brought into contact with people that have been. And I think that's why we need to add it to the community center at our public buildings.
Councillor Majinski.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
make
my bad.
motion. Well, if we were going to add other things, then yeah, that makes sense as well. So long as we got rid of the low-hanging fruit, as Councillor Howe would say, then yeah, I'm okay with that as well. But since it's on there now and amended, then we can continue on. But I didn't want to have certain other areas of the community left out from this, and I have a few other that I'd like to have as a second or third recommendation after this debate.
Councillor Howe.
Yeah, and again, I think the community center, the child care center within the community center is a larger problem that we need to discuss. And I think it's imperative of us to bring in the major employer in Tumbler Ridge and ask them if this is going to cause them any undue hardships. And I also think that they deserve a seat at the table. I think we need to have their input if this is going to affect them. It's a lot easier decision for me to make if Canuma comes in and says, we have no kids in the child care, it's not going to affect any of our 9-to-5ers, it's not going to affect any of our 7-and-7 folks. Do what you want with the community center. That makes it a lot easier for me. But I do not want to create more undue hardships on them unless we're forced into that corner by the province. And I honestly think that's where we should be doing with the community center, is that we wait until the province or the federal government says to us, you have to shut those places down. These other ones, we know seniors are the highest at risk. Willow Hall makes sense. That totally makes sense that we just get rid of that, shut that down for a while. It should have already been done. And those are the people that are at most risk to die from this. Yeah, kids can get it, kids can carry it around. Not too many kids dying from it. From the numbers I saw in China, less than 0.4% from 10 or 19, very, very low. The kids that are getting it and dying from it, very, very low. Yes, they can spread it to older people, but get rid of that one first. Deal with the community center on its own.
Councillor Kirby and then Councillor Culkin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I wonder how many other big centers like Calgary, Vancouver consider their major employers when they're making a decision like this. I don't think they can. We only have one that shouldn't even change our reasons for doing this. And I just don't even think that should be in consideration. Yes, it's going to be too bad. It's going to be too bad for every employer in town. I can tell you right now that there's going to be a lot of businesses that are going to hurt. So, but doesn't matter if your business is hurting, if all your residents are getting sick and hurting anyway. This is about making the choice now.
Yeah, myself and then Councillor Howe. So I support the motion, the amendment on the table. I do believe we have to look at taking Mr. Hallam coming in here and giving his personal doctor opinion of what he thinks is best for the community and its residents. He spoke wholeheartedly here, and I totally have faith in that. I've been watching, I think we've all been watching the news when You know, I think we're just waiting for the cases to come to Tumbler Ridge. They are, you know, slowly working their way into province and other provinces. If this is a way of protecting our residents, our seniors, our adults, our young people, and then our children, I think that is what we need to do. We definitely need to try to help curl the, I'm not sure what terminology Mr. Helm used, but, sorry?
Flatten the curve.
Flatten the curve. I think if this is something that will help do that, and again, we don't have any beds in our facility here. We have one ambulance, like he mentioned. So if we have to start transporting residents out because we have very sick people, that's going to put a more strain on the nurses that are here, the doctors that are here, our local fire department, and the ambulance service. I know the residents use the community center. I know the youth's using it. I know the children are using it, the seniors, and our other adult residents. But I honestly think we have to look for the safety of this community. So I fully support that on the floor. Councillor Allen.
So Dr. Helm came in here and said exactly that. We are a unique community. He said the things. We have one grocery store, one high school, one major employer. That's why I think the major employer should be included in the conversation. We are unique. We are not Calgary. We don't have 1 million people in Tumbler Ridge. We have 2,000 people here. We are very isolated as it is. So to me, I just think that if we have an opportunity here to wait and include them, we should. And that's why I sent out an email earlier today asking that we conclude Kenuma in this meeting tonight. It didn't go anywhere. That's what I wanted, because I wanted their opinion. And I think it is valid for us to do that. And I think we should just pump our brakes on the community center and the childcare space within the community center until we hear from them, until we have some discussion with them at least.
So I'm going to go to Councillor Lehman, but just a couple seconds here. To me, I'm saying the community center. I'm not saying that the daycare is within the community center.
Then you better change the motion again.
There's a private entrance. We can add that to the amendment.
Amend it again.
But the same as I didn't see your email until after I got here today. But you could also reach out to the Kenuma yourself as a councillor. Yeah,
No, that's the mayor's job.
Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is part of the email that Kenuma sent out. We as Kenuma must plan for this and be prepared. We are doing just that. And in this effort, as always, we need your attention and assistance. We understand that many people are worried about this matter. We want to assure you that Kenuma will be a community leader in making sure our community is as prepared as it can be and respond to this challenge as a team. We like so many in many other ways. And then our chief concern is for the health and safety of our employees, their families, and our communities. This is uncharted territory for all of us who have not had to confront a widespread public health issue. We are, however, continuing to our preparation and contingency planning daily. Kenuma aims to help you gain information and understand the basic safeguards you can take to keep yourself and your co-workers healthy. So they're doing what they can. They understand what's going on. I think this says fairly clearly that they're more worried about what's going to happen here than what's going to happen out there.
So whether we make an amendment to this motion that's on the floor, the amendment that's now, and I'm hoping not to, but we can do that. I would like to see if to me closing, and I apologize, Councillor Howell, to me closing the community center is the community center. If we decide that we are going to make a motion to close a daycare, to me, separate motion. If that's not what council believes in closing the community center is, to me, we make an amendment that the daycare is taken out of the community center, and we'll make a motion separately to that if we want to close that. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I consider closing the community center as closing the library, closing the pool, closing the arena, closing the daycare. That's how I would consider closing the community center.
Councillor Majinski?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. That was my assumption as well, is everything in there is all under the same roof, all closed.
Okay, so just talking with staff, and I don't know if Mr. Wall wants to speak to it, but if we are asking to close the daycare, that needs to be in a separate motion. I just asked him about it, and that's why I got clarification. So that's why I apologize to Councillor Howell. Closing the community center to me was not the daycare. So if we want to add that to the amendment, that we leave the daycare out and have a different motion, that's what staff was asking for. Correct, Mr. Wall?
And I'm looking for council to have a debate and make decision specifically on the daycare. Like, listen, outside of the process and the motions, I think council needs to, in the discussions, or you need to have a discussion and a debate and a vote specifically on what you're doing with the daycare. So, you have one amendment left before you can't amend this motion anymore. And, you can go make that amendment and say, and add the daycare facilities, make a decision on that and work your way back through the motion. But you can only amend an amendment, you can't amend an amendment. So this is your last one. And if it gets too complicated at that point, just bolt the whole thing down and start again.
Councillor Hill.
And that's my comment. Why don't we just vote down the amendment, vote on the 3, and then you guys can make whatever amendment you want that has to do with the community center.
Good call. Second. Councillor Noberry.
Thank you.
No anecdote.
I'm, in my opinion, I think the Children's Center is a part of the community center. I think we should be closing it as well. Just to add a little bit of perspective to the matter, from what I understand, there's less than 10 children are in the daycare this week, and they are not operating next week due to lack of numbers. So the amount of people that we would be impacting is very little.
Okay.
How does that work?
He might have done some background information. Councillor Noberry, what we're thinking here is to vote down the amendment, including the community center, and do it separate. To me, Mr. Wall's looking for a separate motion, or recommendation for the daycare. So, okay. Okay, so I'll call all in favor of the amendment to the motion. Opposed? Neither. Okay, so the regular recommendations on the floor. And Jane, can you just read that out for us?
Yeah,
Please.
that the District of Tumbler Ridge closes indefinitely in response to the risks posed by COVID-19 in the Visitor Center, Museum, and Willow Hall, effective at 12 p.m. March 17th, 2020.
Thank you. Okay, any more debate on the motion from the floor? Councilor Kirby?
Just a question, Deputy Mayor. When we say close the buildings, is that closed to the public, or is staff allowed to be in those buildings?
Mr. Wall.
Close to the public. The original motion, and I'll have to apologize if Councillor Howe's included that or not, but the original motion is close to the public. We still intend staff to attend work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more debate? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Councilor Majinski, you got a recommendation?
Yes, I'd like to put a recommendation on the floor that we close the community center indefinitely due to the COVID-19. Is that enough?
Sorry,
To add the
Yeah, I think that needs to be a separate direction from council, just because of the impact that's going to have. So right now, what you have with Councillor Majinski, it hasn't been seconded yet, so you can either add the community center and daycare and deal with them together, or do the community center and deal with the daycare at the end.
thank you. I thought that's what you're looking for.
I think we'll do the daycare separately.
So you're closing the community center is not including the daycare.
Correct.
Seconded. Councilor Kirby. Discussion. Councilor Hall.
What are the costs to closing the community center? Like, we have staff in there, we have leases, we have folks that have gym passes. I mean, all that stuff needs to be refunded. Do we have any idea what this is gonna cost us?
Mr. Wall.
So we don't have to give the refunds, but I'd say that would probably be best practice, and what we would do instead of giving a refund would be to suspend their membership. That's normally what people would take. We could offer the refund, but we'd suspend their membership, and let's say you had a month pass, you just get an extra month at the end, or however long that shutdown is. We don't have any leases active in there, other than we've got the old timers, but any leases requires the facility to be open. The bigger concern would be the revenue generating leases, which is the restaurant. And the restaurant is not operating right now. We don't have an operator in there, so I don't see any costs coming there. I think it would be fairly minimal. There'd likely be a decrease in some costs simply because if a regularly scheduled employee is not able to make it in, we probably wouldn't fill that with a casual. So I could see it being anywhere from a slight increase to even a slight decrease or revenue neutral. It won't make much impact on the budget.
Okay. Any more discussion? So I guess I just got one question, Mr. Wall. You talk about staff and that. So there'd be no curtailing any kind of staffing hours over there?
So one of the issues with that is that we're going to need to pay our employees whether or not they're attending for the full time, and there is work that we will find to be done to do. I don't intend to close it and have part of the district's workforce off on a paid holiday while other people are still working and to collect their paycheck. I think that will cause a lot of issues, and work needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion with the resolution on the floor? Councillor.
So we're doing this one at noon as well, I guess?
I was just about to ask for a time. I mean, were we just assuming I'm in here to do one time?
I think if council makes the direction to close and allows us some leeway and close, I would say don't expect it to be closed at 6 a.m. tomorrow and we've got the doors locked up when the public isn't aware of it. I don't think that would be the best way to go about it. But if you just give us the direction to close it and give us a little bit of time to do that and communicate with the public and communicate with staff, because the staff members that need to do this are likely not watching this meeting and aware of what's going on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wall. Councillor Al.
So when we do this, what's the ramifications of what's going to happen in the community for the next, 2 weeks, or especially while school is out? I think about our youth in town. So nobody's going to the youth center anymore. Nobody's going to the gym. Nobody's swimming. Nobody's going to rooms 4 and 5. There's no community events there of any type. Where do they go? Right. So what? Like I don't know. Maybe they go to the sliding hill. Then do we go? We gotta shut the sliding hill down too. Where are we stopping here? What's the plan? Do we continue with wherever people, to shut other places down, or are we going to do that as they come up? What's your intention here? Because there's an action. There's going to be an equal and opposite reaction to this, right?
Yeah.
Is that?
I guess I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the councillors, but my thought is I listened to Mr. Hellman. You can still go outside.
Mm-hmm.
You can still go hiking. You can go snowshoeing. You can go skiing because you're able to stay. You're able to have that social distancing. Probably tobogganing. You're still able to have social distancing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think if all of a sudden we see a concern that right now it's 50, we're saying all of a sudden tomorrow the government announces it's 10, and you go to scale and we got 100 people there. We're gonna have to look at something. I mean, we are here to protect the residents as a whole. And I really believe that is the job of the council. I mean, I don't think Mr. Helm here sat here and, like he said, if he's wrong, he's willing to say, geez, yeah, maybe I had that a little bit wrong. But if he's right and other people are wrong, I mean, he has something to say. I'm concerned about COVID-19. I mean, you look at STARS, you look at H1N1. I was part of the MS service back then. I remember the protocols we went through. When that all came out, we kind of went, oh, wow, take us to a half hour to don personal protective gear and everything else to go into somebody's house. 15 minutes, whatever it took by the time you got on scene. And it ended up becoming really very minimal impact of what happened. I don't see the same responsiveness. I mean, I'm not in the medical field no more, but so yeah, I think this could change day to day in my eyes as a counselor. So I got Councillor Noberry first on the phone and then Councillor Al.
Thank you, Chair. So I can speak to someone who uses the facilities. I go to the gym, I swim. I'm gonna miss the facilities being open, but at the end of the day, I'm happy to step back and have a slight inconvenience in my day-to-day life to know that our community is taking a proactive attempt to potentially save people's lives. I think, and Chair, thank you very much for pointing out specifically that our local doctor, Dr. Helm, is here. He's speaking to us because of his concern. I think we need to take that very seriously. What really hit this home for me was an analogy someone used, and it was it's in regards to that 3% death rate. If somebody handed you 100 Skittles and said, 3 of these are going to kill you, no one would touch that candy. No one would even think twice about it. Nope, putting it away. So I think that's what we need to do. We need to limit people's exposure, and we just need to say, sorry, I mean, I know it's an inconvenience. It sucks, but at the same time, we're trying to save people.
Councillor Howe.
And all I'm getting is, where do they go? Like, I'm just trying to jog council's thoughts here to think about where's the next place. Because the kids are gonna get together, the kids are, you know, they're gonna be bored sitting around the house. Yeah, if you go hiking by yourself, that's fine, but, you know, these kids are gonna get down to the skate park in the middle of April and, you know, be down there doing their thing as well, right? Or, you know, like, is there anything else that we're forgetting about? This is a pretty huge decision, never ever done in the history of Tumbler Ridge as far as I know. And I just think about it for a second before we just go ahead and vote it and think, yeah, we're saving the world and saving lives and stuff. That all sounds great, but is there anything else that we're missing? Is there any group that is being isolated? Is there anything that's, you know, we're forgetting about, you know, with the consequences to this? So
I got myself and then Councilor Majinski. So yeah, I mean, I apologize that I didn't answer. But my thing again is, you know, we look around the room today and I think majority of us are sitting the 2 meters apart. That was something that we decided before council meeting to follow the social distancing and show by example. So I think when we start doing this in residents, like again, Mr. Hell mentioned it, it's not about panicking. It is about doing the social distancing, washing our hands. Let's try and prevent some of it from coming into it and helping keep our neighbors safe. You know, I can't tell you what kids or youth are going to do, but I mean, there is other activities out there besides the youth center, the swimming, skating. I get it's a big thing in Tumbler Ridge, and you know, it's great when you go down there and you see the community center full of youth and children. But again, skiing, walking, snowshoeing. Alberta, talked to my friends today. Their kids are no longer going to school. They're doing self-isolation in their own home. So they're home in their backyard and their garage. That is where they want their family. So they're doing puzzles and having fires and, you know, going on and doing some free education things online now that they've opened it up because they're not charging you for it. You know, lessening the amount they're on their internet, like the Wi-Fi. They're not letting the kids be on social media as much. They're trying to do more things as family. Probably what we all did back when we were kids. I didn't have a cell phone. We didn't even have Wi-Fi or a computer. So I think it's very hard to see us make this choice and to shut down a huge facility within the district of Tumbler Ridge. And I think we can get through it. We can all get through this as a group. You know, whether it's our residents, us as councillors, staff. I mean, I think, yeah, it's a big move, Councillor Howell, but I think, you know, as we go through it and try to, you know, help people out and explain that there is other things to do, I think maybe it gets easier on people. Like, you listen to people, I mean, and not just Councillor Kirby, but there was other residents here this week canceling their trips to Mexico, and you know how it took 48 hours to kind of get over it, and then they open their suitcases and have to put it back. And you know, I watched some of that on Facebook just because you're friends with, you know, some people, and you know, they're more acquaintances than friends, and you know, you read their comments, and yeah, I can imagine it's tough. You know, we got teachers that normally go away and they've canceled, so they've obviously realized that, you know, going to Mexico or Cuba or whatever, it wasn't worth it, and they've now decided to do other things as a family. And I think, you know, with some of it going to be at the community center, 100% pretty sure. Well, I think there's other things they can do. Like, we have a big out, like you say, you live here because of our back forest and stuff. So I got Councilor Majinski, Councilor Kirby.
I just wanted to add to the social distancing part of it, and a major contractor of any flu or virus that is going around would be the access in and out of doorways and stuff like that. So the point of contact is the major issue and the concern. It's not just the people and the close contact with them as well. So being outdoors and not continuously touching the same thing they are is going to help alleviate that. And then I'd like to also put a motion on the floor after everybody's.
Okay. Debate this motion. Any more debate? Oh, sorry, Councilor Kirby, I apologize.
That's okay, Deputy Mayor. I was just saying, you know, thinking about what are the kids going to do. This is a perfect time to start blogging or documenting what you did for COVID-19 on your days when everything's shut down in TR, and then we can have an itchy feet. So you can come up with the best one. TikTok, Snapchats, you know, I don't know. I guess you just gotta, we're all in the same boat. Your kids are quarantined, but we're quarantined with our kids. So we gotta make it good. Read books, learn how to change a tire, learn a new recipe. I don't know. That's it.
Councillor
You know, Councillor Norbury brought something up about people coming into the community center that we are not self-isolating and they're just doing whatever. You know, though, like, how are we going to be able to deal with that? Like, or, you know, like, is there any ability for us as a council to do anything with that? You know, that's why we can't go to the community center, because somebody is not self-isolating. Like, you know, that's a bit of a concern to me. But again, what I'm trying to get to here, and I don't want to belabor the fact, is you look at what President Trump did when he shut down all international travel. He did the exact opposite of what they're telling you to do. He said, shut down all international travel. Everybody panicked and went to the airports, and we had millions of people hanging out with each other in the airports. I'm just saying, is there something we're forgetting about when we do this? If we take that spot away, where do they go to, right? And like, you know, I would assume we're already doing it in the community. If the mines don't follow suit, you know, if they're not having buses with, you know, only 10 people on it or whatever, you know, is that not just going to cause the transmission of the disease out in places like that where there's lots of people still going? Is that not going to put more people into the areas that we have that are open? Is that not going to put more people into grocery stores and gas stations and everything else? I don't know. It concerns me a bit, and I just want us to think about it before we react. So this is new to me. I didn't know this was coming tonight, that we were going to be voting on this tonight, so.
I guess, I mean, I kind of kept them around for a reason, but I mean, I believe that was a direct order from the province, and maybe Mr. Wall can answer, but self-isolation was a direct order from the provincial government. So to me, if we know that there's people that are coming back from other country and aren't self-isolating as directed by inbound, as an order by the government, I'm pretty sure something can be done about that. John, Mr. Wall, are you comfortable or?
No, I believe that these are still voluntary self-isolations. They're being directed to voluntarily self-isolate. I don't think that there's any legal direction for people to do so at this point.
I believe the doctor gave it an order. Mr. Hom, are you aware of it?
So the order is regarding gathering. That was the provincial, provincial Dr. Henry basically used her powers to actually make it like an edict in the province about gatherings. I think Mr. Wall is correct that there are these strong recommendations to self-isolate. I don't know that that's enforceable. I know that you know, Canadians in general are doing well with that. Doesn't mean there's 100% compliance, but in general, you know, Canadians are wonderful. They tend to follow things like this. They believe in good governance, etc. But you will find the exceptions, and it seems like the reports that there have been some exceptions in Tumbler Ridge, which is very concerning.
I got Councillor Lehman, then Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When countries start closing borders, there's got to be a serious issue. I don't ever remember this as being done anytime ever. Certainly not in my lifetime, and I don't know. I've been around a long time. There's a reason countries are closing their borders. They want to stop the spread. So, you know, am I worried about what the kids are going to do? Yeah, maybe. But I mean, when I was a kid, before most of you were born, we found stuff to do. Like, you know, you live in a perfect place here. I mean, you can go do all kinds of stuff. Get a couple of your friends together. You can play hockey. You can play whatever you want. Figure something out. Like, it shouldn't be our job or the community's job to find something for the kids to do. It's nice that they have somewhere to go, but it's not our job to keep them occupied. They should be able to do that themselves.
Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Kaka. The government today said that if you do not have a Canadian residency, you're not allowed in the country. So that says a lot right there too. So they're not allowing foreigners into the country for holidays or whatever. So that's a big step for them to do that as well. So.
Any more discussion?
No.
Councillor Hall?
Yeah, just one, and for clarification, Councillor Lehman, I was not suggesting that it is our job to try to find what the kids should do or help them do this. I'm suggesting when they're not there anymore, where they go, right? And should we be thinking about that? Like, where else are they going? Are we taking a small problem and creating a worse one? Like they did, that's what my point was. My point was not that we need to help them learn how to do things or give them places to go or whatever. It was not that point.
No, I realize, but we're taking that place away from them.
You're more worried about where are they gonna go and get together as a group again?
Yep.
That we haven't looked at or thought about. So.
That we don't have control over. Could we go 10 or less people in any event in the community center? You know, could we not just say, yeah, you can go skating as long as there's 10 or less people? You can go to the gym if there's 10 or less people. Like, could we do that, or is that a bad?
Then again, to me on that, like gym and all that, it's cross contamination. People rub their nose, whatever, their eyes, sneezing all over the equipment. It doesn't get washed.
Yeah.
Right. Someone touches it, goes to their face, and.
What is the community transmission? Is it a lot? It doesn't seem like it is to me, but.
Well, I think that's why Alberta shut down the schools and their daycares and doing more, because now they did find a community transition, and I believe it was in Calgary. So, I mean, yeah, do we have in BC? I don't know. I mean, Mr. Howell might know more, but right now I think most of them are travel rate. It doesn't mean that we don't have cases that haven't got tested yet, don't show signs yet. And to me, why do we want to take a chance with our residents in Tumbler Ridge? I mean, we just heard from Councillor Newberry that you know, he's aware of some people that have come back and actually aren't doing the. And I thought it was an order, and I guess maybe I was wrong. Maybe I heard the order wrong. But if it's just you know voluntary self-isolation, I mean, maybe that's an order that should be coming from the government to force people to isolate. And maybe that's why those. You know, when you talked about those two people that were able to travel from Coastal Health up in their personal vehicle to go self-isolate, they had to have stopped for gas and food and bathroom breaks. Depends on where they live. So I got Mr. Hellman and Councillor Kirby.
You know, Deputy Mayor, I just want to say the worst mistake we can make is to say, well, we're not aware of much community transmission at the moment. It's not that big of a deal that we don't really have to worry. It's because there is some, and we know what's happened elsewhere in the world. This is why, but yeah, right now there's not a massive amount that we're aware of, but this is the point. This is why we got a window. This is what a window is. By a week from now, the window might be gone. I don't know how long it's going to be, but everyone is using the word narrow window. They're not saying we got a month of a window. Narrow window can be anything, you know, from days to a week. That's how I interpret the word narrow. That's why maybe waiting for the province to come through with it. I'm sure it's coming, but when it's going to come, I don't know. And again, just to repeat here, we're not going against what province and Northern Health are doing. We're just saying we're trying to apply the recommendations they are giving to a local level, because we know our community. And when they're talking from Victoria, they're talking the province as a whole. They don't know that in Tumbler Ridge these are our circumstances. So we're trying to put our heads together, use the great advice that they and others have given, but apply it locally. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. Councillor Kirby.
I would like to call the question.
Go to Mr. Wall first.
I was just
Sorry.
gonna.
I was just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, just to mention the 250 person restriction that came out with the province. That came out specifically to local governments as a message on recreation facilities. There's no doubt that I believe when the province made the restriction down to 50 people, its intent was to shut down most recreational facilities in the province. You know, if you even look at a community size of Dawson Creek, if you've ever been to the pool in Dawson Creek, it's more than 50 people and by quite a bit. So I think that was their attempt to shut down most recreation facilities.
Okay, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Councillor Majewski, you had another motion.
Yes, that the daycare be closed to the public indefinitely in response to the risk posed by COVID-19. I'd also like to add to that, not a timeline. The only reason I don't have a timeline for that would be because I think there should be some leeway there just for families to find alternative places for their children. I just don't know if there was like, because if we say, okay, no daycare tomorrow, parents are off to work, what do you do?
I don't know, maybe Coutts can help, I mean, and maybe Mr. Wolf, just taking, instead of saying, like not putting a timeline on it, you know, saying that, you know, within a certain amount, whether it's, like, I guess kind of a timeline.
Within-
3 days from, you know, so as of Monday, whatever next Monday is, cause that gives them 4 days, cause they close the weekends anyways. Like, if we don't put any kind of timeline on it, they're just gonna stay open.
Yeah, maybe I suggest you do it, you could do it on Friday, next week they're into their spring break anyway, they do have alternate, I believe there's alternate programming during the spring break time, but they moved to a different schedule starting on, their spring break, which is next week.
That starts when?
Spring break starts today,
Sorry? Started today?
so.
I think it's different for the youth center, give me a second.
How about instead of us making the decision to do that, we then contact them and ask them to come in? Contact the childcare center, ask them to come in and say, what do you guys think is reasonable here? Like, so that we have some conversation with them instead of us imposing it and saying, you're closed down on Friday. You say, come in, explain to us your circumstances if we wanted to do this and push that vote to a later date. If we wanted to shut this down, what are the ramifications or implications that we need to know about? And give people in the public a chance to start thinking about this. You know, rather than us say, we're gonna do it on Friday, figure it out. Invite them in, if we've gotta have a special meeting to deal with this, we have a special meeting and it can be done before Friday.
Child care center is already closed next week, is what I just received.
It's not closed this week though.
Child care center is already closed next week.
Yeah, it's not closed this week.
Mr.
So
Wall?
just said.
Yeah, so their spring break starts next week on Monday. They'll be closed. They're closed on the weekend as well. So if council wanted to give them flexibility, you could allow them to operate till Friday. And if you don't have to, council can say, listen, we're closing this right now. But if you wanted to give them flexibility, you could close them on Friday. And there was nobody planning on attending there next week, so you would be giving families almost 2 weeks advance notice that they will not be opening up after spring break.
Councilor Norberry, I know there's not seconded.
Thank you. Has the motion been seconded? Sorry.
No, sorry, we're getting clarification with the time on staff.
Okay, I'll wait to speak until we have a seconded or if it's defeated.
Okay. So, if you could just read your motion.
That the daycare be closed to the public indefinitely in response to the risks posed by COVID-19.
Starting tomorrow, Friday.
Starting Friday.
So after Friday or Friday morning? Sorry, we just need to make sure it's right.
After Friday.
So 6 o'clock Friday night, March 20th. Seconder? Council Lehman? Okay, discussion. Council Norberry?
Thank you, Chair. I was originally in favor of closing the Child Care Society, but at this point in time, I think that maybe we should leave that up to them. They do have their own private entrance. They are following the situation with the health ministry. From what I understand, they are taking all the steps they can to make sure all children are not displaying symptoms. So I think maybe we should allow, in this case, for the high levels of government to make that decision for us, or the Children's Center itself. Thank you.
Any more discussion? I guess my only comment I had was, not was it to Mr. Wall, we have the ability to close down that facility? Mr. Wall?
Yeah, that's our building.
So we'd be the building, but we're not, so if they were to go somewhere else, they could open up there.
They could go, and that's the same with anything, if somebody wanted to start up their own private pool. I don't want
Or
them to
gym
be
or whatever,
flipping
right?
private pool, private gym, if they wanna take any of those things off our hands and open up their own private one, and I'm all for it, let me know.
Any more discussion? So I guess I'll just make a comment, and I think it's the same as Council Norby, or close to it, and that is the thing, like, they're closed for a week, I kinda think we get a chance to, I think, almost like the BC government, let's do spring break and kinda zero in and then decide. I mean, if we're thinking of waiting 4 days to, close a child center anyways, I think, I won't support the motion and get some more details maybe from, the daycare, so, yeah. Any more discussion? All in favor of the recommendation on the floor? All opposed?
Nay.
Defeated. I'm sorry if you had a question, I'm sorry if I missed it.
No, it's fine.
Okay. So the other motion I wanna put on the floor, or somebody else does, but I'll put it out there. So again, I was in, and I know some of you guys didn't see this, and I apologize, but this was done, after our quick discussion this morning regarding Mr. Helm. So, I put on the floor that the district reach out to the province to request a change in municipal tax payment deadline to September 1st, 2020 without a penalty. Second. Councillor Majinski. Discussion. I'll go first. So, we're talking about shutting down the community center. Councillor Howe spoke about, what could this do and stuff like that. Councillor Lehman, you mentioned about Kanima and possible some of the steps that they may take. If we get people going on to EI, I think the last thing we should be as a community is, I guess it's the government. I didn't realize we couldn't change the date. It's actually the government. So I learned something new as a councillor after 5.5 years. That's why I'm kind of saying we should ask them if we can do it locally. Like, I don't care about Dawson Creek if they don't change theirs, but why go after people that could be laid off and everything else asking for their tax money on July 1st, 2020? If we're able to extend that timeline for people that need it, maybe not everybody needs it, but extend it with no penalty being opposed to them from the government side. So that's why I put that motion on the floor to have staff reach out. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can I get the CAO's opinion on that?
Yeah. Mr. Wall?
So we're fairly fortunate in our community that we have the cash savings so that we're not in a cash crunch situation should we get most of our tax money in later. There would be a difference in processing time that we'd have to work with finance. So when those taxes are coming in, there's a peak load on finance, but I think there wouldn't be an issue in just shifting that out, especially if there's advanced warning for them, then we'll know when to have those resources there. And basically comes down to is you don't get to take vacation during tax time. So those are the only internal changes that need to be dealt with should it happen. And I would imagine that what would result in it would actually be coincidentally enough is a flattening of the curve of the expected work from finance, because I think you're still going to get a lot of people paying on time, especially the ones that have been paying through the banks, and then the people who aren't paying through the banks and are going to need that extra time would come in later. So I don't foresee there being a major issue should that be approved.
And the thing is that's only if the government allows it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're asking them to allow it, and they might say no, but I just thought that was something that we could also do in case we do see economics in Tumbler Ridge change, whether it's the mine or other businesses within our community that staff do get laid off or something like that. So, any more, Councilor Kirby?
No, just thank you,
sorry.
Deputy. No,
Any more
just
discussion? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Oh dear. Question and answer period. Oh, Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Kirkhope. I just had one more concern and maybe a possible recommendation. We'll see how this goes, but I think we should also put out a public notice or a information on social distancing and how to go about it in regards to even larger groups of people, so that we don't have, say, people going to church when there's going to be more than 50 people, going to the Legion, going to all the bar, restaurants and the pub and stuff like that, because most likely they might be more than 50, and people should maybe have this in the back of their mind that should be a consideration now before we start closing everything down. And then I don't know, that's just a thought of mine that we should maybe have just a notice go out or,
I think we, I believe we should be, and I know Mr. Hellman mentioned it too, and I think, that'll be where we can do updates too, and we talked about, it was actually Councilor Kirby that mentioned it, about doing it right here in the chambers, cause that way it can be live streamed to residents, they don't have to go around to the post office or the bulletin boards to find out what the town's next step is, or what the report is, or updates are. So, I don't know if you need direction to do that, good? Okay. Councilor Hall?
So the question to staff, so what's the plan for if this thing becomes indefinite? If we say we're shut down for 6, 8, 10 months, a year, when do we start layoffs in the District of Tumbler Ridge? Do we do layoffs in the District of Tumbler Ridge? Or what's our plan? Any idea?
Yeah, it's something.
What's your plan for the next 3 weeks, I should say?
I mean, that's something that council's gonna have to consider. If there's a long-term shutdown in services, how long are you going to continue employing the people that would sustain those services? I couldn't give you a hard timeline. That's gonna have to be something that the administration and council work on together, because when if you relieve those people of work, there's a chance you get them back, and that's the risk when it comes to some of these facilities. You cannot simply restart with the staff you have if they don't have the tickets in order to run them, and those would be the type of people that if you lost, you would be places if different startups come. So I don't have an answer for that. This is uncharted territory.
But there is some amount of timeline that has to be given to employees through the union if layoffs are gonna come where you have to pay them out or something like that. I think that whatever that information is, we better get that information to council to start chewing on it. Would you guys agree? That we need that information if it's 6 weeks that you have to give notice, that maybe you say that, hey, notice starts next week and you got 6 weeks. We'll see how it goes from here, but can we afford to continue to pay indefinitely and not have anybody in the facility using them? I mean, to me, we've got to start thinking about it. That's what's happening.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, and that's kind of why I asked Mr. Wall about, are we looking at any slowdown of staff over there and stuff like that, and that's why he said there is some stuff that, they can obviously do in the meantime, and I don't think it's wrong to get the paperwork or
Participant exiting.
Chris?
at least have some information or have staff give us a report. You could ask for that meeting too, because they'll have the information and at least council's aware if that's something we do, and I don't even know if that's, how do we get direction as council?
To lay off staff?
I'm not saying like, just the information, to get the information from you.
Yeah, I would.
Report?
Yeah, get a report. One thing to consider that's happening right now is most of the companies that can are trying to avoid getting into those situations simply to maintain and not punish their workers for having.
Announcing participant.
Chris?
Going through this pandemic. That's something to consider, but if council wants a report, we can do the report. In order to eliminate positions, we don't have to give notice beyond what is required from provincial and federal work standards. It depends how long the person's been working there, and it depends how long they've been, and it depends on their positions. We could give you kind of a general idea of what it would be, but someone who's worked there for 20 years is going to have a vastly different notice period than somebody who's worked there for 1 year.
Yeah, and then it's just for the long term. Like we talk about this, keep the curve down or flatten the curve out or whatever, but, and we're hoping that this stuff works. But I'm talking long term here. We have to have the conversation. It's up, it's financially prudent that we have that conversation to know where we are way before we get there. If this thing turns into 6, 8, 10 months, are we comfortable with just saying, no, we'll just keep paying the salaries for 6, 8, 10 months? That's why I think we need that report.
You can make a recommendation for the
Okay,
report, absolutely.
I'll put a recommendation on the floor that Mr. Wall prepare a report, the staff prepare a report with the implications to do with the union and staff positions for layoffs.
Seconder? Councilor Lehman? Discussion? Councilor Kirby?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would like to, in my opinion, I'd like to give this a month before we start doing this. I think everybody's in a hardship right now, and I don't want to put fear into staff when we're making a decision that's for the benefit of all residents, that's our staff as well, that all of a sudden their jobs are at risk at this, and that we're thinking about that. I think I would, in myself, I'm going to vote against that, and I'd like to wait and give it a month before we start thinking like that.
Councillor Hall?
Well, we are going to be into a very difficult situation within a month. Mr. Wall is no longer going to be with us in a month. And that's why I would like this information now. Nobody is saying that we are going to implement anything. We just should have the information and have an understanding of how this works with unions and how this works with people that are on staff that have 20 years of experience or whatever it is, and which positions absolutely cannot be left out. Like Mr. Wall can give us an indication of, you have to leave this person, and this person, you have to leave this crew, this is what we could do. And just to have it so we can start processing it, rather than a decision like tonight that is decided on in 2 hours. Right? Give us some time to think about it.
Okay, I got myself and then I got Councillor Norbury. Yeah, and you know, Councillor, how you mentioned right there, I don't think we're looking at it, but I think with Mr. Wall leaving, I think notice is for April 10th. I mean, I think, you know, it'd be just prudent to let's, you know, get staff working on it. I mean, we have an intern coming, but I think it's good to get the information. I don't think there's any decision being made by council. We're just asking for it so we know. I mean, I think staff needs to know that we're not looking at layoffs. I mean, and you made it the comment, Councillor Kirby, and we're closing those facilities for the better of our residents, for health-wise. Okay. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Chair. I do agree with Councillor Howe. I do think we need to have a conversation. I don't agree with the asking of a report. I personally like to see us sit down at a policy and priorities meeting or another meeting discussing the merits of whether we want to go down that course, if we want to lay people off, if we want to prevent them from working. I think that discussion be happening first before we're asking for a report. So I'm not in favor.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Defeated?
Nay.
Okay. Anything else from council? Okay, question answer period. Questions from the press. No, you're always first, so.
No, I'm always last.
No, well, that's been different chairs, I guess. I'd like to go first.
I mean, you covered off a lot of stuff. The important thing actually isn't for the questions, but if there is any information that you want to get out and into the paper, it goes to press tomorrow at like 10. So if there's anything that you guys want to get in as far as advertising, public notices, I'm going to do a story about this, but just so you know, if there is anything you want to get in.
Okay, perfect. I think staff heard that. So if they need something else, I'm pretty sure they'll have it to you fairly early in the morning. Gallery.
Question first, did you take curbside recycling right off the agenda? Or
We-
just move it?
No, we took it right off tonight, and we took it off just to, don't have a senior staff member present tonight, so we just took it off.
Couple of comments, information that
Question.
I have.
Question? No comments, if you can make it a question, sorry.
Okay, did you know that today the Ministry of Education, which is what rules libraries and schools, was meeting today with all of the stakeholders? There should be an announcement tomorrow.
I'm well aware of that.
And the other thing is, were you also aware that libraries across the province are closing? The last one that I saw was Hazelton, which staff are going to be in place in some cases, but Hazelton, they were told that it would potentially be a 6 to 8 week shutdown. So that's what's out there, and the library notices were flying today.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Hill? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, well, so we don't have it on there again in regards to morning, or not on there? Anybody? Have it on there again.
Which?
No, this came out after.
Okay. Okay.
Recommendation that the Monday, March 16th, 2020 Policies and Priority Committee meeting be adjourned.
Seconder? So nobody wants to go to close? Okay. Councilor Kirby?
I'll make the motion to go to closed.
Well, we can discuss the adjournment. Aye.
The motion's on the floor to adjourn, so neither needs to be defeated or sustained or approved.
Okay, well, I won't be supporting the motion to adjourn. I mean, there's a closed package here,
Yep.
we're all aware of it. We asked for it, so I'll be supporting adjournment. All in favor of adjourning? Opposed?
Nay.
Defeated. The motion
Oh, I'd like to make the motion to go to closed under section, I'm not too sure. For labor relations.
there. Seconder? Council Lehman, all in favor? Carried.